Well, cold again. Not quite the nice blue sky we had before. Well, it's clearing up. But let's try it out. Now, line of sight to start, always dodgy with me, and I'm going to put full faith in the system and try this auto launch thing and see how it goes, because that's what it's supposed to do. So let's see if it does that. And if it crashes, it's no way my fault then, is it? Can't be. Let's try it. If that works, if we've still got a plane left, we'll try FPV. No, we need full rates. Alright, this isn't too bad. Once we go back to self-level, as you expect, that's actually flying really nicely. So I'm going to land it and FPV it before something bad happens, which it invariably would. Let's go around one more time. So off we go, and once again I'm launching in what I call the blue mode, which is essentially a launch mode, and it auto levels the plane. And this worked really well again, especially for someone like me, where I wear glasses. I'm really short-sighted. I lose the plane pretty quickly. So I launched it visually and it went out of sight almost immediately, which is when I put the goggles on. It's a little bit overcast and stuff anyway, so this is pretty difficult to see in the sky with these sort of hazy whiteness. But what I can tell you about this is it's flying really nicely, and also gave me an opportunity to check out exactly what the modes do. So as mentioned, this blue mode, this launch mode, is fully auto leveling, and you might think it's a bit weird that when you increase the throttle the elevons go up like that, but in flight this was actually okay. I didn't generally put that much throttle into it, so it wasn't really altering its pitch that much. What I did do is go into manual mode, and I needed a bit of trimming there. The manual says do not trim in flight, but I'm guessing that means do not trim if you're in one of the stabilize or auto level modes, because that, you know, would have a problem. But this needed a little bit of up and a little bit of right trim to get sorted, and that was absolutely fine. Now, the red mode is standard stabilization, and what this does is just hold your attitude as most stabilizers do without self-leveling, which in this wind conditions, which is very light, didn't really have much of an impact, but I can see how that would be very useful if it's a bit more breezy out there. So despite it being little, it seemed to have plenty of power. You could climb easily, you could roll it, you could loop it. None of this seemed to be a problem at all, and I was going mainly about mid-throttle, and it was going along fine. It really suited this sort of small field that I had here, which is a bit enclosed, which I never particularly like, but it seemed fine. Now, I wasn't sure exactly what full throttle would look like, because I can't remember in the DVR footage. So here's me, what sounds like full throttle, coming past a fly past. But at the same time, it was a bit far away. So if you look at this one, which is a bit closer, not full throttle, but it seemed okay, and this one closer again, and still not full throttle. But suffice to say, it seemed pretty good in the air, pretty speedy, didn't have any complaints, and certainly didn't seem to be any danger of it stalling. Now, if you're thinking, wow, this is really smooth, what an amazing plane, I'd love to say that was the case and this plane's just staggering. But we also had just a 4-mile-an-hour wind, which is ideal conditions for this. And I love it because in that sort of wind, these little wings have no problems getting in nice and close to the floor. and you can fly them along as if they were a mini quad, a couple of feet off the ground, which is my sort of preferred way of flying these days, it seems. I don't know if this is because of mini quads that all I want to do is hug the ground and fly along. I do blame mini quads completely for my use of the rates. I'd actually set this up at 50% rates, which seem to have a lot of movement, but because my fingers are now so used to being really quite gentle on the sticks instead of having a really full range, I pretty much just put full rates straight back on, so I knew what I was doing and just used smaller movement of the sticks there. Now, I was just flying this up to about, I don't know, 500, maybe 600 meters away. It's not a plane that I would call a distance plane, but at the same time, I know there's a whole bunch of guys that love getting these little planes and installing all sorts of things and seeing if they, can get 10k of distance in them. Each their own there. For me, this is a great little fun plane which I use around a field and just hurtle around close to these trees. It'd be great fun to get in with some friends with quads as well to do some chasing or other little planes like this. I just like the fact you can use it anywhere at all. So you see here, I'm coming up to about 10 minutes of flight. I think I launched at about 39 seconds. And I've still got oodles of battery left. I think this would do a good 15 minutes, longer if you're going to take it easy. But at this point, it's a bit of a problem on my fingers. I literally can't feel them anymore, which is why I decide I'm going to come round and have a landing. But this is just a good example of how you can get down really low, fairly slowly, and not really wary. I think I'd have a different opinion if it was windy, but I think up to about 10 mile an hour, you haven't a real problem with these wings, and wings are going to generally cut through the air a bit easier than a normal plane, although you are going to get that sort of wing waggle on the yaw axis. So let's bring this down for a landing. It seems to come in quite fast, and I don't know if that's just what it is or the fact the trees are blocking me. I might have got the wind in the wrong direction, but it bleeds off speed okay. Well, that was over 10 minutes. I had plenty of battery left, a good few minutes left, but I can't feel my thumbs anymore, so I just need to put my gloves on and have a rest before I do the next one. So this one was a full goggles on launch, which is my preferred way of launching, just so I don't have to faff about with the goggles afterwards. Now, I only really flew this extra battery because it was a bit cold, just to get some overhead shots. But I thought I'd share exactly what happened because it amused me when I watched it back. I'd set my camera up just in front of the bags, and then I'd notice as I was flying towards it, I was in the way myself. If you look at this footage here, you'll see I kind of have to get out of the way. So I ended up having to move in goggles, and I don't know if you guys have ever had to try and walk in goggles before when you're already flying, but it looks like the most awkward walk you could ever imagine. But I got a couple of little shots I wanted. I just wanted a couple of overhead ones where I was coming straight into the camera. So we get that one, and then we did the reverse angle, which is not as good, but hopefully gets the general idea of speed and stuff. And coming into land here, this looks absolutely fine and no hassle at all, but it got turned around in this grass and one of the wings flew off. Is this the design concept to come off in a crash? I'm not sure if this was a bit loose or not. It's all good. Just a bit wet still with this field. Well, I have to say, I didn't think this was necessarily going to be any good. I thought, maybe a bit alright, but I couldn't believe it would launch itself in a very basic stabiliser. But it worked brilliantly, and I actually love this little thing. I mean, the fact you can just, in 2 minutes, collapse it down to nothing is just fantastic. And the fact it flies so well and launches so easily is just bonus to me. I'm not a great line of sight flyer, so anything that takes the hassle out of throwing it and either being able to take my glasses off and FPV goggles on or just guide it around a field is brilliant. So despite me thinking, you know, this stabiliser is a bit of a novelty, actually worked really well for sort of basic stuff like that. Brilliant. I mean, if you wanted to, you could of course take it out. There's enough room to put a flight controller in and run iNav if you really wanted to. It's not my thing on these little wings because I'm so awful at trying to squeeze things in there, but it's, you know, it's quite a big bay if you're not me. Someone remarked on my build config video about perhaps putting the run cam split in there. A couple of reasons I don't want to do that, apart from my dislike of the run cam split. I really like the run cam Swift 2 in this one because A, it gives a brilliant picture even in those really quite murky conditions. B, I get the battery voltage up there, which is pretty useful, especially when you're varying the throttle. I mean, it's going to go 10-15 minutes, but I'd always prefer to know what my battery voltage is. Secondly, I'm thinking if you really wanted HD, there's no reason not to put a camera somewhere up here. There's room for it. You just have to watch the CG because it can change quite easily. You only have to move the battery back and forth a centimetre to change it all. So you just need to make sure, ideally, the camera should be about here. Maybe sort of poke it up on something. It would certainly work, and I think you get some great shots from it. Someone else asked if this would make a good beginner plane, and normally I would say you probably want something like this Bixler type here with the big dihedrals, which are much more easier to sort of control and much more floaty. Now, although this seemed to fly at a fairly quick pace and certainly came into landing fairly quickly, that little stabiliser in there and the fact the wings just come off and, you know, the nose is probably not going to get all bent out of shape unless you really dump it in there, says actually this is probably an okay first plane. I mean, I wouldn't say just buy it and if you've never flown before, go ahead. You'd probably want some help from a friend or a bit of advice there just on general when setting up a plane first time. But yeah, that little stabiliser is a bit of a game changer. The fact you can just put it in that mode, throw it, take your hands off and it will just level, put in a bit of stick input, let it level, made it very, very easy to fly, even for me, which is saying something. So yeah, I really like this, so I can heartily recommend it if you're looking for a little fun flyer that will take FPV gear, which fold down to nothing and you can fly in quite small locations. So it came from Banggood, thanks for them sending it to me, and of course the link is down below if you want to check it out. For me, I will be back flying this soon, I hope, and I will see you next time. Bye for now.